Hello everyone, welcome to my book club 13. How is everyone? Come on in, tell me how you're doing. We're doing a book club on my book, A Radical Awakening. Here it is. But I have the cover the other way. Here, Radical Awakening. This is what we're talking about. Book club number 13 today. Hi guys, come on in. Good to see you. You can buy the book anywhere books are sold. You have it on Audible. So come on in. We're going to wait for a few minutes while people come in. We're going to be talking about something that may help you. That is in my book, talking about stuff. I may have a guest on today. I'm just seeing if she's going to come in. Loved your interview with bellew. Finished the book 2 days ago. Leave a review, Adriana. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Come on in. Book club number 13 is on its way. Hi from Pakistan. Read and have the audio both. Amazing. Almost finishing the book, Mochka. Wonderful. Come on in, guys. Book club number 13, page 58, Betty says, read and also bought the audio. I love it. I'm just waiting for my guest. Maybe I have a guest coming in today. I don't know whether she's here. Chapter 6 so far. Okay, so what I want to talk about till my guest comes in, I can't see her. Let me see if I can find her. Hold on. I don't see her here. Okay. I don't see her. Okay. Angelica's on part 3. Anita just started the book. Archana's in the middle of the book. I love it. Reading it on Kindle. How do I do this? I'm waiting for Talina. Is Talina here? If Talina's here, say hello. What inspired you to write this book? I'm going to answer in a second. Talina, are you here? Come on in if you're here. If you're not, don't worry. Okay, so what inspired me to write this book was the countless women I met and have been meeting in my practice and my friends, that no matter how competent we are, no matter how good we are, we all are plagued with this deep inner gnawing sense of unworthiness. And I wanted to help us heal this unworthiness, because this unworthiness allows us to have poor boundaries. This unworthiness causes us to allow behavior that shouldn't be allowed. And until we create boundaries and communicate effectively, we will burn ourselves down. Now, here's the thing. Part of this radical awakening is to know yourself. You can't know yourself. You can't know yourself and then not love yourself. So if you're not loving yourself, it means you don't know yourself. And you can't do any of this work until you know yourself. So knowing yourself is your key responsibility. That's part of the radical awakening. So the other day, I had to say no to somebody and create a boundary. You're getting triggered, I understand. So I had to say no to someone and create a boundary. And they said to me that they felt criticized by me. So I had to teach them that I'm not criticizing you, I'm just laying a boundary. So it's really tricky, because if we don't know ourselves, then all this work gets confusing. Knowing ourselves means to know your true self and know your ego. In this book, I talk about the ego so much. Part 2 in this book is to help you identify your ego, the faces of your ego, your false self. Talina, if you're here, say hello to me. Is Roadrunner 95 here? If you're here, say hello. Let me just text her and tell her I'm here. Okay. So the part 2 is all about, in this book, is all about knowing the faces of your ego. You see, if we don't know how our ego traps us. So for example, my ego traps me when I say yes too quickly and I overcommit myself. So my ego, my false self that wants love and worth, says yes too quickly because I want to be loved, but then I go over my own boundary and I get exhausted. I get tired. So that's my ego. Somebody else's ego is always feeling afraid of not being worthy, not being loved. So they put up walls, right? They procrastinate, or they don't call you, or they don't talk to you because they want to create distance, and that's their ego to create a wall. So unless you know how your ego, my ego is so big, I don't deserve to be loved, that's how I feel. Right? Your ego is your ego comes to protect you. Somebody wrote that, G. Lawman wrote, your ego comes to protect you because you're afraid of being rejected. But if you don't know that that's your ego, then you will just shut down and the other person will get confused. So when you feel afraid of being rejected, you create a strong shutdown, a shield. But you keep people separate, you keep people away so they don't hurt you. But that's how you actually fulfill your prophecy that you're alone, because then the people reject you. So in this book, I explain over and over how the false self gets set up in order to protect us. So in childhood, we were hurt. We were too young to protect ourselves through our language, through our faculty, through our heart. We were pawns in the game played by adults. Because we were pawns, we absorbed everything. We absorbed the beliefs of our family. If they told us we were not good enough, we believed it. If they told us that we were not worthy, we believed it. Now, because we believed it, and because it was so painful to believe, the psychic structure created a protection because it was too painful to believe. So the psychic structure said, okay, you're not worthy the way you are, so let's create a false self so that you can feel worthy. So you became skinny, you became clever, you became assertive, you became a rebel, you became a pleaser. We became quiet. We didn't want to ruffle any feathers. We didn't want to talk back. So because the way we were was not honored, how clever we were, we created a false self to cover up the pain of rejection. But here's the thing. The false self keeps us being rejected. It's a funny thing. For example, if we had too much pain in childhood, we began numbing by eating too many cookies. We began numbing by watching too much TV. We began numbing by being pleasers. Right? We began denying our authentic feelings by being fake. Right? by being alcoholic, by being sexually promiscuous. Whatever we did, that is going to catch up to us, and we're really going to be rejected. So now the alcoholic is rejected. The sexually promiscuous acting out kid is rejected. The bulimic kid is rejected. So whatever primitive ways we used in childhood, anger, right? Many of us used anger, right? We just got angry. We just fought. By wife number 3 or by husband number 3, you're going to be out the door. And then you're going to say, see, I'm rejected anyway. Yeah, that's the way it works, right? It's so tragic. The masks don't work. Yes, they protect us in the moment, but they don't last for the long term. And this is the tragedy. And we set up patterns. So if we don't feel smart, okay, for example, if we don't feel smart, we either overcompensate, which makes us, so if we get 99, we still don't feel smart. If we get 98, we still don't feel smart. Or we sabotage. We procrastinate, we don't study, and we don't feel smart. If we don't feel loved, we're always watching for not being loved. One time your friend forgets your birthday, you're like, see, I'm not loved. It's impossible. It's so hard. And it's so hard to realize that it's not your true self. And then so somebody asks, so what if you're not the rejected? What if you are the rejecter? It's the same thing. We're playing games so that we can fulfill our internal prophecy of childhood. If the childhood prophecy was, I'm not smart, we're not going to feel smart everywhere. If the childhood prophecy was, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy. Whatever the childhood prophecy was, the false self appears to protect us momentarily, but long term, it is effing with us, okay? It is messing with us. The amount of times I've told people that their ego is some curse words to show them your ego is but they can't see it. So then when I say your ego is they go, see, you don't love me. I'm like, I don't love your ego. Your ego is exhausting. But you I love, but your ego is exhausting. Everybody's ego is a pain in the tush, okay, including mine. So you have to know your ego. You have to know your ego. So my ego, very much, is the bullshit. I'll tell you my bullshit, okay? So you feel free to like and have compassion and humor for your bullshit. I'll share mine. Mine is to poke my nose where it's not wanted and shove my body in situations where it's not needed. Because as a young child, I was the problem solver. I was the savior. I was the good one. So I get my fix, my love and worth from fixing situations. So I fix situations. And so I am always entering situations saying, you want me to help you? You want me to save you? I'll save you. I'll help you. And then I am tired. I'm exhausted, right? So this is me. And then somebody else's will be something else. So you have to know your pattern. You have to know your pattern, right? My pattern, I've said many times, is very hard for me to say no. I hate it. I hate saying no. So instead of saying no, I'll say yes and then burn out and then get resentful and then get upset with the other person for asking too much, right? Don't ask me so much. No, Shefali, don't say yes so much, right? So unless we know our own pattern. Part 2 is all about knowing your ego. Until you know yourself, guys, don't listen to me and waste your time. You have to go on a quest to know your bullshit with compassion and humor and openness. You have to go, oh my God, there's my ego again. Oh my goodness, there's my ego again. Right? There's my ego again. You have to see how you set up your pattern. If your pattern is no one loves me, please know that you're making it that people don't love you, right? Because you're not giving people a chance. Because your pattern is, I'm not lovable. So unless you know your pattern, you will not move forward. So here, I write in chapter 3, do we dare to own our part? Right? Do we dare to own our part? The awakened woman doesn't understand her plight in order to bemoan it or feel victimized by it. She takes into consideration how she has co-created it. Right? So let me read from this one. Hold on. So this is in part 2. Here you go. Confronting the shadow. This is getting to know your ego. It is the most important part of this book. The many faces of the ego. I write, the reflection in the mirror is often not a pretty sight. You don't want to look in the mirror, right? Because if your pattern has been that you are such a good person, and then you look at the mirror and you realize you've just been doing this because you want to get love and worth, you don't want to look at it. Or if your pattern is that nobody loves you, and the reflection in the mirror is to notice how you've set it up so that nobody loves you, you don't want to look in the mirror, right? You don't want to look because it's so painful to see how we have set it up, So in my book, A Radical Awakening, part 2 is Confronting the Ego. I write, the reflection in the mirror is often not a pretty sight. The crevices and cracks beneath the mask are too vivid to ignore. We try to bring others into the scene, right? We distract ourselves by saying, but she did it, but he did it, but they, but them, but those. We want to distract the pressure of taking complete self-ownership. We want to take the pressure off taking complete self-ownership. I'm just seeing if my guest wrote back to me. I'd called somebody here. Okay. So we try to bring others into the scene to diffuse the glare, while the fissures, right? The fissures keep getting more ebullient until finally both the image in the mirror and the mirror itself cracks. So the ego, our false self, needs to be dismantled. And I write, the ego will not be dismantled until we begin walking toward wholeness. Our internal holes need to be replaced by a sense of wholeness, which is a feature of the authentic self. Talina, there you are. How do I invite you? Hold on. Go live. Okay, in 1 second. When our holes move toward wholeness with a W, we will begin to shift our patterns. So recognizing your patterns are key if you want to disrupt them. How do you disrupt them unless you recognize them? So this entire book of Radical Awakening is for you to know yourself. It's for you to take power back. What this book is about and my offering to you. So I'm going to call Talina.
Hi.
Hi, have you been here all this time?
I just came on a minute ago because I'm in the West Coast. So I was thinking for later, but here we are. It's awesome.
Here we are. So Talina wrote to me because I told people to send in their stories of a radical awakening. So once a week or whatever, I do stories with real live women to understand their stories. I've never met Talina before. She just wrote to me and she wanted to share her radical awakening and her own path from fear to courage. So, Talina, without getting into too many details, tell us why you wrote to me and how this work is meaningful for you in a personal way.
Yeah. Okay. So, I stumbled upon you and everything that you were saying just struck my heart so true. And it's just the life I've been living since I was 18 is when I started having this realization in my life that the path that is laid out for us in the majority of the world is just I couldn't walk it. It was just too fake. So yeah, I became pregnant like I wrote you, and when I was 18, and I wanted something different for my children, and I really threw myself out there and just started radically looking for truth.
Right.
And
You wrote that you began seeking truth from a young age, but you felt so many people wanting you to sacrifice your truth in order for stability. So talk about the pressure you felt as a young girl to follow your truth. What
yeah,
pressure did you feel?
yeah, so I feel like we are, as humans in general, but also as a woman, that we need to have something to fall back on, um, something that's supposedly stable. And I have nothing, this is my son, I have
Hi.
nothing against, people's ambitions and whatever it is that they feel drawn to do, as long as they don't feel like they have to sacrifice who they are to do it. And sometimes it is just part of our path and we have to walk it until we realize, like, I'm a stranger to myself. And but so for me, yeah, I lost all of my friends when I said no more of this. I am leaving it all. And I walked away from a house. I had 2 young children. I walked away from a house, 3 jobs, all of it, to really be true to myself and what I felt like was important for us as a family, which was to be present with my children and really be there with them. And so, yeah, all of my friends said, no, you can't do that. That's not possible. This isn't something we do. We can't just, what about security? And what about a house? And what about money? And what about everything? And I literally had a frame pack and my 2 kids, and we were together and we created a family, and we to this day have a real relationship. And I feel like it's affected who my daughters have become, because they were able to discover themselves through their own awakening and not through this pressure of, which can also, I'm not saying that can't happen in a system-based situation. I just have never seen it happen.
So you're saying you walked away from the system. So what parts of the system did you walk away from? Was it a job? Was it a marriage?
Yeah.
Was it a city? What part of the system did you walk away from?
So I walked away from the pressure to uphold normalcy, I guess. Um, I did walk away from 3 jobs because I was a single mother. So I was working 3 jobs already. My kids were in daycare all the time, so I never saw them. We had a house, and I walked away from that because that was costing me, I had to work 3 jobs to keep a house that we never were in because we were always working. But I also walked away from a concept of goals that my daughter, didn't seem realistic for us, that were, the idea of success was that we have a big house, a nice car, things that were costing us our soul, really. Yeah.
So
Which,
how do you, so when people say I can't leave this marriage, I can't leave this job, I don't have money. Money is a big reason why people don't change. So it
yes,
sounds like you gave up a considerable, lifestyle and dropped. How did you make that decision?
it wasn't really hard for me because it kind of came down through generations. My mom like sacrificed her marriage for money, which is interesting. So I feel like the fact that I went away from money is something that is also something that needs to be healed still, because it was, you know, a trauma that I had. Like, I lost my family for the sake of money. So I kind of bucked back against that by saying, you know, no possessions for me because it cost my family. But also I do feel like I have a very strong, it's okay. I have a very strong, I feel very strongly about not sacrificing what is important for money. And it's true, people are afraid to change for that. And it's sad because I see so many women, but also, you know, fathers a lot. It's just, it breaks my heart because that's where the fathers get taken. They're like, but I have to provide and I have to meet the standard that the world sets for my life. And then they become overwhelmed and then they can't be present for their family.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating because it's so subjective, but it becomes objective in our minds. You know, I cannot live without this. My
Yeah.
kid must have these things. So
Yeah.
subjective, but because they're habits, they feel objective. And it's all up for grabs, what we need, what is comfortable. These are all realized entities. They're not objective realities. You know, you
So true.
change your lifestyle, you gave up.
Mhm.
I can't what are the 5 things that you for sure gave up? Give us some specific objects. What did you give up? Like 5
Okay.
things.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so at that moment, I gave up car, house. I mean, I'm not going to say work. I'm going to say possessions for my kids probably was a
What
big
about
one.
extra shoes, extra clothes, extra da da da?
For my kids, yeah. For my kids, yeah. I'm not, I don't care about that stuff, but I did feel it for them because I was like, I had 2 daughters, you know, so I was like, oh, I want them to have, you know, nice stuff and
But you did
whatever.
give it up for yourself too.
I did for sure because it's, you know, I didn't do it for them because they should have it. I did it so that I, you know, like I wanted it for them so I would feel good, like a good mom, you know. So that's true. Um, what else? Probably,
What about not living in a fancy house? What about not having
yeah,
fancy gadgets? You gave up, you were willing to come to give up that.
yeah, definitely. I mean, those things were easy. It was more like um, approval, probably from
Your peers?
my peers and my family. I mean, my family is supportive, but still, it's like, yeah. So those things, food, you know, we gave up a lot of the overindulgence of food because we
Let me
had
ask
everything.
you, what do you think people look at you and think of you in the judgmental way that you had to also learn to negotiate? Like, what are people thinking of you that you had to walk away from?
Oh yeah. So at that time, it's interesting because now there's a different perspective, but at the time, you know, I had to combat you know, the concept of laziness, like I'm just lazy and I don't want to do it. The concept of carelessness, just being, you know, not just being reckless with my life and my kids. Um, you
Right.
know,
So
a lot.
people called you reckless, selfish,
Yeah.
uncaring, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's what people do when we
Yeah.
want to break out of the system.
Yeah.
And they're saying these things to keep us to come back. Hey, come back. It's their fear that we're going too far. So they try to badmouth us so we come back. But
Mm-hmm.
you have to be so strong to realize that that's their truth and not your truth. So how did you arrive at such an inner knowing that you knew that you needed to follow your own path? How did that happen to you?
So it took a couple of years. It took 2 good strong years. But I have to say part of that process was because my dad is a very big with philosophy. Like I told you, I came up with, you know, I read The Power of Now, like right when it came out. I think I was 18 or something. And so I grew up on philosophy, but I didn't have the example of it. I had the conceptual notion of it. And I hypocrisy is really hard to deal with when you are looking for truth. So part of it was that I was already really convinced about truth. And then the other part of it was it took me years because it was very painful to go through that process. But eventually I realized that what we come up against with other people is their own fear, and often their own resentment towards themselves, because if you really get there with people, they want this freedom. And now that I've gone, it's been years I've been doing this, and people who were in my life before were like, oh, what did I do with my life? Why wasn't I more courageous? And why didn't I make more bold steps in my life? And so I do have that confirmation now. So it's easier for me to come against it now, where I see when people get angry about my lifestyle and get angry about taking these bold steps, I can know, like, oh, they're just afraid. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So have you read this book, A Radical Awakening? Did you
I
finish?
hate it. I can't wait. Yeah.
So
Yes.
good. I'm so happy you came on, because when you sent your email about being so unconventional, I knew that you could teach us. So here's a woman who's walked away from the comforts, from the status quo, and you had to deal with people's criticisms, but you did it. And thank you for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Talina.
Yeah. Thank you for your work. You're doing awesome. Keep it up.
Of course.
Okay.
Thank you. So just bye, guys. So I'm going to continue the book club. So just as Talina was talking about, to radically awaken means to go against the status quo of your own life, to go against all your belief systems that you have become habituated by, that you've become married to. Until you break the pattern, there is no radical awakening. A radical awakening can only occur when you break free, when you break the mold, when you let go of the pattern, and you have the courage to follow your truth. There are many people, maybe but only 1% of the total, but that's a lot, who dare to walk away from their old patterns. People think that you are being defined, you're being irresponsible, you're being, so bold. But no, all you're doing is following your own truth. That's what Talina just came on and showed us, that she just stayed her course, what was right for her, what was good for her. So this is the path of radical awakening. It cannot occur by you staying the same. You have to radically awaken from something. From what? From your past. You cannot radically awaken and stay the same. So you have to decide, what kind of life do you want to have? Do you want to have a life that stays in the status quo? Or you want to peek out and look out and see what else is there for me? I have so many couples who come to me, and when they're in big trouble, of course, and I just recommend to them, maybe you want to just take 30 days break, a 30-day break. And then, oh, what do you mean? I'm like, just like 30 days be roommates, or 30 days just have sex but don't talk, or 30 days change something. And they can't, because it's terrifying. They take it to mean that it's a breakup, but it's not. It's just a disruption. So if we don't learn how to dare to shake up the pattern, how will we learn who we are without the freaking pattern? If we eat flour every day, how are we going to know how we are when we don't eat flour? We have to experiment. Safely experiment, right? Try it out. Go for therapy. Travel. Don't say yes so much. Start saying no. Meet a new friend. Learn a new language. Any new thing makes you grow. A new way of looking at life. And that's why growth is the key to your evolution. If you don't grow, how are you going to evolve? But to grow means to change something in the old pattern. And that's what a radical awakening is about. So this woman, Talina, look, she gave up her past. She wrote, this is what she wrote to me. Ironically, she just wrote, the very circumstances that lit the inferno in my heart also cost me so much, right? The very inferno that lights us up comes with a price, right? Because people want us to forego the inferno. I love that. She said there was an inferno in her heart. There was a fire, but there's a fire in each one of us. But fear keeps us, fear of what other people say, keep us from tending to the inferno, from handling the fires, from seeing where they take us. So this is the book, A Radical Awakening. And I'll be here tomorrow with another book club. These book clubs are not going deep into the book. You're going to have to read the book and buy the book. But I like to come on to give you some sparks from the book in case you're on the fence and don't know whether you should buy the book. Maybe it'll make you grab a copy for yourself today. So this book has energy, it has a vitality, it has a mission, it has a message. Grab your copy. A Radical Awakening. I'll see you for the next book club. Bye, guys.